Previously on Kink Police Sneeze Fetishes, this stupid idiot tried to learn more about sneeze fetishes by emailing a sneeze porn star to get into the mind of someone who does this for a living. However, in his attempt to distract the viewers with his pretty colors and editing, he completely forgot to actually learn anything about sneeze fetishes. But that all changes in this episode, episode 3. In which case he was lucky enough to have 3 people with sneeze fetishes reach out to him to share their experiences. Welcome to Kink Police. The third interviewee, C, did not want to have her audio included in the video. She texted me her answers to the questions, and then I had my friend Adri answer them verbally in this video.
Hi, I'm Adri. I'm not actually C, but C wanted to remain private, so I will be sitting in for her.
So how did you find my video on the sneeze fetishes?
This is actually kind of weird because it's not directly related to it. I was watching the Jax Films video where he was like reviewing YouTubers' videos and stuff, and so I saw that. And then when I logged into my other YouTube account, which is the one that I use for more fetish-related things, it was in the recommended there too. So I was like, maybe I should reach out to him and, give a better perspective. Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm Rose. I'm 24. I work a generic retail job. And I really like Pokemon. And that's kind of my whole personality, is just how much I love Pokemon. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I'm loud. And I am very, very gay.
Hi, I'm C, a 21-year-old bisexual woman. I'm doing this video because I think having a sneeze kink is interesting and not many people know about it, so I'm happy to contribute what I know and maybe even learn more.
Are you ready to talk about sneezes?
Let's do it. Let's talk about the dirty shit.
How old were you when you first discovered that you were like, oh, sneezes?
I don't know if there was like a particular like moment in time when I suddenly realized like, oh yeah, this is like me. It's kind of more like, it's been there like as long as I can remember. Like even playing with dolls as a child, I would sometimes incorporate that, not even knowing like what it was. I became older and like, puberty and stuff, and then I realized, wait a minute, this is like a not normal thing.
I knew that it was like a thing when like before kindergarten. Like I remember it as early as I was sentient, where it was just kind of like something that existed before I had a sexual identity. It was recontextualized as sexual when I got to sexual maturity.
The earliest memory related to the kink that I can think of is during puberty when I was around 11 years old.
And what was that experience like?
It's a little bit embarrassing, but okay. Basically, there's a video game I used to play, and one part of it included sneezing, and I liked it. It's called Zoombini's Logical Journey. It has logic puzzles. In one of them, there's a game called The Allergic Cliffs. The cliffs are anthropomorphic, I guess, and they're allergic to Zoombinis with particular features.
A lot of people with various like fetishes or kinks will describe this, where they'll encounter the fetish in like innocuous media, if it's like a safe for work fetish, and they'll feel like weird and embarrassed. But it's not something that they can pinpoint.
Since you learned it that early, did you assume that everyone else was also into sneezes?
No, and that's what's weird, is that like I don't know how I had that reference level, but I just knew that my obsession is the only word I can use for it, or my interest in sneezing and stuff like that. I knew it was weird, I guess, because other people didn't like talk about it as much as I thought about it. So like my brain would just kind of default to thinking about that topic, but nobody else was bringing it up, so I just didn't bring it up.
No, I was aware that people aren't into that. I think it was a while before I realized that there were other people who were into sneezes. I started searching stuff on the internet, and I think my entry point for finding that kind of stuff was fiction.
I didn't even realize that like I was particularly fascinated with it. I just thought it was like, oh, I like many things. I have a lot of hobbies and I watch TV shows, and this is just one of those things. So I didn't realize that wasn't like a usual kind of thing to be into.
I once heard it described in an article on cracked.com of all places. I heard a writer describe it as like watching a sex scene with your parents, but you're the only person in the room who knows it's a sex scene.
Are sneezes as intense as sex?
I don't know if it's like as intense. I don't know if I would compare them. It's more like it's better when it's like sex is better when that's involved, but it's not like it has to be there or like it's one or the other.
It's like more of an enhancer than anything. It's just kind of like someone you're attracted to does something and you kind of get hit with that like electric jolt where you're like, oh God, like sleep with me, like
Yeah.
you know, and it's like in your stomach, kind of like in your groin. It's like that, and I can dissociate myself with it because when you have a safer work kink, you kind of have to.
Well, I've never had sex, but I would say no.
Just based on the fact that masturbation is more physically pleasurable than a sneeze.
Yeah, masturbation is more physically pleasurable. Sneezes are pleasurable, but in a different way. It feels kind of weird to say one is better than the other because it's kind of like comparing apples and oranges.
So the feeling that sneezes give you, are sneezes the only thing that give you that specific feeling?
Maybe it's a little bit like kissing. When you kiss, it does feel good physically, but there's also like that rush of endorphins or whatever, if that makes sense.
Do you enjoy having sex?
Yes, yeah.
Are you able to have sex without sneezes being involved?
I am, yeah. I know that some people aren't. Some people need a kink in order to like get off. But me, it's just like something that kind of enhances it for me.
If I masturbate, I will usually include sneezes in some way, but that's not because I need it to enjoy masturbating. It's because I like doing it. The only thing I need for masturbating is my own hands and or a sex toy. Sneezing is just a pleasant addition. I don't know why I did that. Sneezing is just a pleasant addition.
What is your sexuality? Because you feel pretty gay, if you don't mind me saying.
Yeah, I get that impression a lot. I think I sound like I'm gay, but I think my voice just makes me seem like a lesbian. But no, I'm pretty straight. It's actually interesting while we're talking about this particular fetish though, because while I am a heterosexual woman, if I'm watching, like if I'm going on YouTube where you get most of the sneeze content these days, that's where I'll be like, oh, I'll click on this video even though I know it's a woman, but it's still like arousing. So I don't know exactly why that is. It's kind of like transcending gender, this particular aspect of my sexuality.
Are you only attracted to when women sneeze, or?
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, the way my gayness works is that I can
I love
be
that
attracted
term.
to a gayness.
Yeah.
the way my lesbianic inclinations work is that I can be attracted to a pretty man, but only if he exists in a way that is intangible to me. So I am attracted to cartoon pretty boys because they can never be attracted back to me. And occasionally there will be like a celebrity man who I will think is very nice looking. For me, it's men who resemble women. I like pretty boys. I like bishonens, stuff like that. But yeah, and anyone who like who can't actually be attracted back to me, I'm into. In real life, though, in my own personal relationships, only women. That's all I care about.
Do you look at a woman and think like, oh, she's attractive?
I mean, I think like the vast majority of women are pretty, of course, but I normally am not super attracted to them. That being said, though, I love anime titties, but that could be, I don't know if that's related, but that's just, I think everyone likes anime titties. Like, for all my regular, like, just non-sneeze-related sexual preferences, like, it's always men. So, it's kind of an interesting thing that, like, this particular fetish doesn't matter. It's like, either gender's fine. But I see a lot of people sharing the same sentiment online.
I'm bisexual. It took me a long time to figure that out, but the kink is actually one of the things that helped me realize that. Because I realized I was interested in both male sneezes and female sneezes, but I had different preferences for each at different times. Sometimes I'm in a mood for one kind of sneeze, sometimes I'm in a mood for another kind. In terms of different genders tend to sneeze differently, so sometimes I'll want a male sneeze, and sometimes I'll want a female sneeze, and sometimes either is good.
Is that the only way that your sexuality has affected your sneeze fetish?
I'd say that's the main way. I mean, I don't think I'd be into female sneezes if I was straight. I thought being straight was the case for a while, and then I realized, no. I am attracted to women, not just their sneezes.
How do you incorporate sneezing into your sex life?
Well, I haven't told all of my partners about this in the past, so When I do, though, it's mostly like, like maybe as foreplay sometimes, or, well, that's when it works probably best because then it's less distracting from other things.
People come up with a lot of really good scenarios. You could have like a kind of BDSM top, like tying their bottom up or tying their sub up and like making them sneeze, and that could be like a whole thing. Or you could have two people who both have the fetish and the top is like turning the bottom into a flustery mess by, sneezing on them or like near them or in public while they're out trying to have a date or something. Personally, like I am a total top in the bedroom, TMI, but my girlfriend,
I feel like I could just like tell
the top energy.
Yeah, it like radiates off you in waves.
Oh, that feels good. Yeah, the top energy. I am kind of a top, but as soon as my girlfriend starts busting out the fetish stuff, I just crumble. Like I become a bottom because in the wake of that, like I don't know how to function. It's so much sexual stimulation. I'm just like, oh God. So I just kind of crumble to the floor.
With other partners in the past, what have their thoughts been?
Well, it's usually kind of okay. I know sometimes like they'll say like, is there anything that I could do to improve this? And so sometimes I'll bring up a couple other like maybe more normal sounding kinks first, but then eventually they're like, they can kind of tell that I'm thinking of something else while I'm speaking.
But usually they're okay with it after a certain amount of time?
Yeah, I think so. I don't think it's not super taboo. Like it's not, I mean, it could be a lot worse, I think. I think I'm kind of lucky in that regard that if it's gonna be something unusual, then at least it's not something like dangerous or harmful.
Yeah, I have a boyfriend. I told him about the kink shortly after we started dating.
How did he respond?
Quite well, actually. He was surprised, but was pretty cool about it. And he was willing to talk and listen about it. Sometimes he does stuff related to the kink for me. Sometimes when he realizes he's about to sneeze, he'll record the audio and send the recording to me. And sometimes when he sneezes and I'm not there to observe it, and he isn't able to get a recording, he'll tell me about it later. He's made himself sneeze for me using the tissue method or the sneeze powder method. Also, he has the Photic Reflex. The scientific name is autosomal compelling helio-ophthalmic outburst, or ACHOO syndrome, which means looking at a bright light, primarily the sun, makes him sneeze. That has potential for fun things like him taking off sunglasses so that he'll sneeze. And while my boyfriend has responded well to being told about the kink, not everyone I've told has responded so well. One guy I told teased and insulted me about it.
So we talked about your partner already. Was there anything else you wanted to add about their thoughts on the sneeze fetish? Or
she's honestly pretty cool about it. She doesn't really have a lot of thoughts about it. She mostly just uses it to tease me in cute ways that couples would tease each other.
Yeah.
Like if we're out in public and she like sneezes off to the side, she's gonna give me kind of a look as if she had just like, grabbed my thigh under the table or like, something like that.
I'm seeing all the upsides of a sneeze fetish now.
Right? No, a safer work kink is actually pretty cool because it's harder to get caught when you have a safer work kink, It's if you have a consensual adult to kind of like, share that secret with, there's a lot of cute things that can be found in that, and I find that a lot with her. She's very, very understanding.
I feel like 100% of it is having a partner who's understanding of it and is like willing to work with you on it.
Yeah, or even just a friend, honestly. Like just having one person who doesn't kind of like be like, ew, weirdo, why are you into that? Like can really change everything. I try to be that person for other people. I have a friend on Tumblr who has a weird fetish. I say weird lovingly, completely different from mine, but because we both have niche kinks, I follow their blog just because I want to show support and solidarity. Nothing they post is really of any interest to me. I just want them to know I'm there and I appreciate them and they're not strange to me. Back in early days when I was a teenager, browsing Tumblr, there was one fetishist who was into emetophilia, which is like, she likes vomit. And me and my friends just like, we made fun of her. Actually, I should say them. I don't know her pronouns. We made fun of them just like constantly. It was like a meme in our group chat, like, oh, look what this weirdo posted. And we would like tag each other in their art, and we were just kind of relentless about making fun of this person for no reason other than that they had a kink for puke. And nowadays I would never do something like that. It's, partially because what leg do I have to stand on? But also partially because, like, yeah, I know what it's like to be there now, and it's kind of lonely already, so I don't want to make anyone feel weirder than they probably already feel or more isolated than they already feel.
You said that you could enjoy yourself sneezing. Is that as intense as masturbation, or is it a different feeling?
No, not like masturbation. It feels good and arousing, but it doesn't involve my genitals, so I guess there isn't as much physical arousal. But if I do make myself sneeze, there's a decent chance I'll masturbate afterwards.
When you sneeze, does that do something for you?
Yes, actually, but that's uncommon, I've found. Me, though, I'm very... I don't know how to describe this. I'm just very up my own ass and self-centered. I have at one point gotten drunk and made out with my reflection in a mirror. That sounds fake, but that's a real thing that's happened.
I respect that.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I kind of crafted myself to just be this woman that I would love. So I think I'm very pretty, and when I'm like sick and I'm like a mess like that, I'm kind of into myself. Just the idea of it. So it does do something for me, but not nearly as much as like if somebody that I was like in love with was a sneezy mess. I would be much more into that.
Recently, I don't know. Like, I've been experiencing like more enjoyment of it. I know a lot of people in the community are like, yes, that shit is the best. But for me, it's always been like, eh. But that's also because I really don't sneeze often at all. So I'm the type of person that when I make a YouTube video, which I have made a few waves for YouTube, it's like I have to force it. So it's less interesting that way. But lately I've been thinking like, yeah, it's pretty nice. But maybe more so in the sense that it's like I feel sexy when I do it. Does that make sense?
Is it sort of the equivalent of looking at yourself naked in the mirror?
Yeah, I was gonna say, it's kind of like, if I'm wearing like a lingerie outfit or whatever, I say, wow, that's pretty hot. But it makes me feel good about myself, I guess, and that kind of adds to that feeling. So I think it's kind of similar, at least for me.
You sneeze and you're just like, oh wow, like who is she? Like who
yeah, like what was
Oh,
that? Wow.
So obviously there's the sneeze itself, right? But what about like the mucus? What about like the nose itself?
If you can believe it, all these things you're bringing up as an outsider, there's like terms for all of them. There's like factions for them. There are people I've noticed who kind of have like a nose fetish as well as the sneezing fetish. Like they'll talk a lot about the shape of the nose or like, this guy has such a cute nose. I'm personally not so into that. Like I don't really care what someone's nose looks like. It's just there.
I see a lot of people online, especially lately, talking about how like they like certain noses. I know a lot of people on Tumblr are into like the big nose stuff. There's a lot of big nose propaganda on Tumblr lately.
Big nose propaganda?
Yes. A lot of people are just like, they'll write in like a text post describing like the size of someone's nose, like the shape of it, or they'll have like a paragraph dedicated to it in a fan fiction sometimes. And yeah, so a lot of people are really into that. For me, I think it'd be more like, I don't know if it's smaller noses, but like those can be really cute, but like just moderate size for me. I don't know. I'm not super picky, but if someone does have like a nice nose, I could be like, that guy's got a nice nose, and I would be able to comment on it, but that's once again kind of case by case.
The mucus and the snot, that is referred to in the community as mess. People will either, they'll like mess or they'll dislike mess. Personally, I'm somewhere in the middle. I am not put off by mess. It doesn't necessarily do anything for me, but like if it's in the game, I'm like, yeah, sure, that's fine. I can dig this.
Like looking at it or like playing with it too?
If I was getting into it with my partner and she was like, if she were to sneeze on my neck or something like that and it was messy, I would probably be like, hell yeah, let's go. But the mess wouldn't be a part of that. It would just not be something that would like turn me off in the moment. I wouldn't be like, ew, gross, that's disgusting.
Because I was trying to like compare it to either a hand job or a blow job. Would you like mess around with you wouldn't mess around with the nose a bit?
Probably not. No, I think some of us probably would, but for me, it's just kind of like, whatever. I'm just there for like the breathiness and like the faces that they're gonna make and the sound itself, just like the act of it, really.
So is there a difference between a bad sneeze or a good sneeze, or like is it sort of like boobs? Seeing boobs is just great no matter what they look like?
There is discourse about this. Personally, if I'm attracted to a person, the way that they sneeze is always going to be attractive to me. I'm always gonna think that's hot, no matter what they sound like.
Yeah.
But if I am just kind of like objectively observing from afar, yeah, I like certain personalities to have certain sneezes. I will admit to that. I like big personalities to have little ones, and little personalities to have big ones. Stuff like that. Yeah, a lot of people in the fetish community also have it out for people who sound like they're coughing when they sneeze.
Oh, yeah. I don't even have a sneeze fetish, but I hate that.
There are a lot of different ways to sneeze, and different people have different preferences. Some people prefer others to sneeze, and some people prefer to sneeze themselves. Some, like me, enjoy both. A sneeze has multiple parts. Pre-sneeze, what the person looks like, sounds like, and does as they prepare for the sneeze. Build up, the intake of breath and other audiovisual components involved with this part of the sneeze. Release, the chew part of a chew. And then there's, however, the sneezer and other people around them respond. Sneezes have different qualities: volume, wet and dry, stifled and free, etc. They can also be from different sources. Colds and allergies are the most common. Some other possible sources are sunlight for photic sneezers, and irritants like dust or pepper. Some people like sneezes from certain sources more than sneezes from other sources. I like sneezes with buildup. Wet sneezes with basically more snot. They sound different from dry sneezes, and if there is a visual, sometimes you can see it, which I'm into sometimes. I usually like sneezes that are a bit harsh and forceful. Sneezes that are really high-pitched and girly are not for me. Or ones where it sounds like the person is shouting or really old. And I definitely do not like stifled sneezes. I like sound and visuals both, but sound alone does more for me than visuals alone. And I think that's because audio content is easier to find than visual content. So visual could detract from my enjoyment if I don't find the person attractive or find the visual gross or something.
I'm not 100% sure, actually, because it varies so much. It's kind of like, I'm like this with I don't know, you'd say what's your ideal type? And to the same answer I have I don't know, because it varies so much, it's all case by case. But personally, and this is a controversial topic, I really like what we normally call it a messy sneeze, which means there is snot involved. And this sounds crazy now that I'm saying it out loud. That's something that I would prefer. I know a lot of people are very against it. Some people are fine either way, but to me, that's the best part, I guess, that would make it ideal. And also, if it's maybe a bit quieter, I don't know. I feel like dad sneezes aren't for me.
How does a cold sneeze differ from an allergy sneeze?
I'm really not 100% sure on that. I don't know. I think, with an allergy, you can cause it to happen pretty easily. You can just be here's for example, people like flowers or perfume. You can just be there, and that'll cause that reaction without a question. But for me, and for many others, I know this is a bit more controversial, but with a cold, there's normally other symptoms. They're tired, or maybe they'll cough, or, there's also a contagion aspect, which a lot of people talk about. So, I don't know, that's just my preference. I like them both.
So, I think I could be in different moods for different sources at different times. I like colds and really any other minor illness that involves sneezing, because there's the sneezing itself, but then there's also the other symptoms, and there's also caretaking involved. I also like allergies, but I don't know how to describe why exactly. It's it's more targeted, and the person knows it's coming, oh no, pollen, I'm in trouble now. I think in terms of fiction, allergies have a lot of potential for just coming up with different scenarios.
So what feeling do you get when a person a child or a family member sneezes?
Depends on who it is. For a child, it generally doesn't register at all.
The most cringe you can imagine.
If you're stuck in your house with your family and one of them's sneezing for whatever reason, it's a visceral disgust.
Maybe my brain will be that was a sneeze, and I'll be okay, but that's it. For someone who is too old, it usually just kind of grosses me out. And for a family member, it either grosses me out or makes me irrationally angry. I guess it's just my brain being aggressive, how dare you do the thing I would be into if it were someone else?
I don't even know how to put it, because it's my brain gets confused, and I'm just I don't like this.
I thought I had misophonia for a long time before I realized.
What's that?
So misophonia is it is a disorder where certain sounds trigger you, and I mean like trigger you. Like they make you just want to rip your hair out, they make you want to claw at the walls. It's like a skin crawling, horrible reaction that you have. And that is what I thought I had before I knew I had a sneezing fetish, because like, you know, my sister would be making noises and I would just like be like, stop it, but you can't say that because, like, you know, a person can't control that. So, and I also get that way when I'm in public and like I hear like a kid sneeze, because, you know, it's basically like the same reaction as if you were to see a kid do something sexual. You'd be like, that's wrong, that shouldn't be happening, that sucks. Like, it's just like a visceral disgust.
So for the most part, after doing research, I figured, okay, sneeze fetishists just seem to be like, you know, you guys are regular people, you just happen to have a sneeze fetish.
Yeah, pretty much.
Like the one thing that I'm still like a little bit hung up on, that isn't a huge deal, is like sneezing in public. Like,
yeah,
obviously you can't help that you're attracted to that, but like, what's the mindset there when you are out in public and you see a sneeze, or hear a sneeze, or see a sneeze?
And sometimes I can kind of dissociate myself from it. Sometimes I can just be like, that's a noise over there, I'm ignoring it. And I don't really have to think about it too hard, and my brain doesn't think about it too hard. Sometimes I will, like, if I see an attractive person, I will get kind of like oh, okay. But for the most part, if I don't know the person, or if it's just like a stranger, I'm just kind of like, all right, I'm just gonna ignore that, and then I'll go over here. Whereas if it's someone I think is attractive, or someone that like I'm in a relationship with, I'm just like, oh, oh, please take me now. So it varies. I try not to creep on people.
Well, that depends a lot on like the person, right? Because like I remember in class in high school, there was this like one really attractive guy that sat like a couple seats in front of me. And like without fail, every single day he would sneeze at the same time. And I just thought it was, first off, that's miraculous. I don't know how he pulled that off. But that was a nice experience. But then like other times it'd be like if one of my close friends or like some stranger that's like an old guy in like a store or something, I'll just be like, It's just kind of awkward. It just all of a sudden reminds me like, oh yeah, that's a thing, and you don't like that. Because like in daily life, when I'm not thinking about it, it's like sometimes I won't even realize that like, oh yeah, that's a thing, because like I don't talk about it like ever. So sometimes I go online and I'm just scrolling and I'm just like, but do I really like this? I guess I do. So then when I'm in public, it just reminds me of that, but like in the worst setting.
It's similar to if I see someone attractive in public. In my mind, I'll be like, ooh, nice. And then just kind of move on with my day. As I said earlier, I have specific preferences, so it's not like every time I see or hear someone sneeze in public, I'm going to be turned on. Since sneezing does happen fairly commonly in public, you do have to get used to hiding it.
So even though you have the fetish, and even though you're objectively attracted to a sneeze, it's not like you're on all the time.
I don't know, like if I'm washing the dishes, like, and it's not the first thing in my head, but then if I'm washing the dishes and like one of my friends sneezes, I'd be like, oh yeah, that's a part of me, and I feel kind of uncomfortable, like I have to be hiding it. Like they're gonna find out if I react the wrong way. It can be kind of weird when the situation happens like just out and around, because I'm like, am I supposed to say bless you, or do I ignore it, or do I make a joke about it? Like depending on the person, I have no idea what to do. And I'm sure normal people wouldn't even think about something like that, but I see a lot of people posting online like, what do we do? Are they gonna find out? Like it's a big secret.
As a person without a sneeze fetish, I know that it's not a huge deal to like either ignore it or say bless you. But for you, that's like an entirely different thought process.
Yeah, and I know for some people, like, that I read about online, like, I don't think I would think this, but some people say that, like, just the act of blessing someone is, like, attractive in its own right.
Do your parents know? Like, does anyone in your family know?
Absolutely not. I feel like if I told my sisters, I have 3 sisters, I'm the oldest of 3 sisters. I feel like if I told them this information, they'd be chill with it. They'd probably just roast me a lot. I don't like telling it to people who I'm around a lot, but who I wouldn't consider them like my closest friends, just because it kind of makes things a little awkward when an everyday activity, something that happens every single day, is suddenly recontextualized from somebody who doesn't totally understand it.
My family doesn't know, and I feel like it would just be weird to tell them. It's not like they need to know my sexual preferences. My mom did catch me reading sneeze porn when I was younger, shortly after I realized I had the kink, and told me to stop. I think she was worried it would become a fetish. Technically speaking, a fetish is necessary for arousal, whereas a kink is not. But that was many years ago, so I'm pretty sure she's forgotten.
My former best friend, we're not best friends anymore for unrelated reasons, but he was my best friend for quite a long time. I told him, and he he had this habit where every time he sneezed, he would turn to me and be like, "Was that good for you?" So, which it was really funny. But I just like, I would feel like kind of like under a microscope. Like every time he would sneeze, I would be like, "Are you watching me? Are you looking how I'm reacting?" It's less about like, "Oh, I'm scared," and more about like, "I just don't want to deal with this, man."
Do you personally feel that sneeze fetishes are weird, or do you just feel that since other people might think they're weird, you also have to think that they're weird?
I think it's pretty weird, but I mean, I'm also the kind of person, like, I just know a lot about just all fetishes on the internet. Like, I read a lot about it. It's like, I don't know, it's kind of like an interest of mine. Like, I think I would have gotten into it regardless, but I think, like, the knowledge that I do have one kind of, like, sparked my research. Like, I would Google it, and then I would see the results, and I would just, keep clicking on links and reading more and more about it. But I feel like with, like, researching fetishes and stuff, I think they're all weird. They're all unusual, but like there is no such thing as normal either. So just everything's weird.
It's strange because I'm a very unashamed person in pretty much all aspects of my life. When I think about it logically, no, I don't think it's weird at all. I don't think kinks or fetishes are like weird. I think they're really common and that people just don't talk about them as much as they could. Because I would never shame anyone else. I think what I'm just feeling is societal shame. Women are already kind of shamed out of sex and shamed out of feeling sexual feelings. And then if you throw an obscure, not very talked about or like noticed kink on top of it, that's like an extra level of potential shame. So it's kind of more that I've been conditioned to feel this way. It's not necessarily that I think that anyone else should feel this way.
Yeah, and I mean, even like really common fetishes, people still think are weird. Like, I think the most common paraphilia is like feet. And people are still like, ew, that's weird and gross, but like a lot of people have it. So like normalization doesn't make something normal. It just makes it known.
When I was doing more research on this topic, I was looking at how 50 Shades of Grey affected the BDSM community, because at first no one really knew about it, and then even though that in itself was an unhealthy example of BDSM, it caused the people who actually know about BDSM to like talk about it more, and then it sort of became normalized. And then the same thing sort of happened with feet fetishes, where it was a meme at first, but then people started talking about it more, and it sort of became more normalized. And so where in the process do you feel that sneeze fetishes are, and how do you want sneeze fetishes to like be incorporated into society if that is something that you want to have happen?
So I do want that to happen with sneeze fetishists, but I want that to happen with all fetishists, honestly. Just like as long my perspective is that as long as your fetish isn't actually hurting anybody, as long as you're not being a creep, and as long as it's all consensual and like, no one's getting hurt, there's nothing wrong with talking about that stuff between adults, of course. So yeah, I like that. When I see someone like making a joke about like, oh yeah, this fucker has a foot fetish, there's that like part of me that has been conditioned that wants to laugh along and be like, yeah, look at the weirdo. And then I kind of have to like take a step back and be like, wait a sec. I think allergies are sexy. Like, I can't, I'm literally in no place to laugh about this.
Well, I think right now is kind of at the stage where quite a few people have heard of it, mostly because I think PewDiePie made a video about it a few years ago, and, we see, like, every now and then, like, some tabloid website will, like, put up an article about it, but I know, I was reading about this morning on the forum, actually, when I was checking to see if there were more responses to a post I made, and one of the threads that's going is a lot of people seem really worried about people acknowledging it, but more so right now because of, like, the world situation. So
yeah,
a lot of people are worried that it'd be like a negative thing and everyone would look down on it. But I just think if it were to be like normalized and people would know about it, I still don't think it'd maybe be like feet. But I feel like feet are funny. Like people either love feet or like they hate them, and there's very few people in between. So I think with sneezing, it's more of there's not such a strong divide. People don't ever say like, I have a friend that if like your foot is near them, they will be like uncomfortable and like yell at you. But I've never seen someone be like, oh my god, you sneezed in front of me, how dare you be in my presence, you know?
50 Shades of Grey is a very good example. Like, the way that healthy BDSM was kind of talked about and normalized, and how people called out the portrayal in 50 Shades of Grey, like, hey, this isn't what this is supposed to look like, but here's what it could look like and what it should look like. That was a really cool phenomenon, and I would love that to happen for anyone who has an obscure kink or a niche kink. I just want people to feel like they can talk about what they're interested in, because truly, I fully believe that human beings can't help it. Like, I don't think we can help what we're attracted to. So, like, why feel like shit over it, you know?
So how would you say that having a sneeze fetish has impacted your view of other niche fetishes?
I just think they're really cool. I think, like, if someone, I don't know, is into something random, I can't even think of something, then my thought will be like, wow, that's so cool. Like, I wonder if there's, like, a culture as rich as, like, the sneeze fetish culture attached to it. I wonder if, like, they've made friends through it. Like, I just get really curious about it. I think they're all, like, equally interesting. Obviously, there are some that are a bit dangerous, I've heard about. And I think for that case, I guess it's more like, as long as they're not causing any harm to someone, then like two consenting adults can do whatever they want. And I think it's actually kind of interesting if they find a way to incorporate it.
So even though you obviously don't get to choose what you're attracted to, do you think there's a reason why? Do you think it's biological, or do you think you had like an early experience with a sneeze?
I struggle with that because I've read into fetish psychology. From what I can tell, a lot of psychologists have kind of, and you might need to verify this, it's been a while, but a lot of psychologists they have proposed a theory that you're exposed to something in your early years at the same time that you're exposed to something that is a part of sexual development, and that crosses your brain wires. Personally, I don't have any experience I can point to. I don't have like a show I can point to or a book I read that it like changed everything for me. I do believe the theory that like my brain wires got crossed somehow growing up, and now I think this is a sexy thing. But I could not even begin to guess what that was.
So I know you're on Tumblr, but did you ever join the sneeze fetish forum?
I think it was blocked on my parents' Wi-Fi. I did find it on data, but was mostly unimpressed.
Yeah, so I probably like discovered the forum when I was about 13 years old. And so I've been kind of lurking there ever since, and I don't even remember when I made an account.
I found the forum when I was really young, and I kind of like lurked it to try and like discover parts of myself. But the scene isn't really my jam. I'm more of a fandom kid, so I mostly lurk around Tumblr. That's kind of where I hang out.
Yeah, there's actually a pretty big community right now for sneeze fetish on Tumblr. It's actually kind of interesting because like even within within the internet in general, you know, there's like a different type of people that use Reddit versus that use Facebook or Twitter, and those are all like different types of people. We kind of have that in our community too. So a lot of the people that think the people on the forum are all like old and creepy is kind of a stereotype of people on the forum. So people who didn't like that kind of went to Tumblr.
Is the forum really not that good?
I mean, I think it has a lot of good in it, especially because it's the first place where a lot of people end up when they search this, thinking that this could be something that relates to them. So I think as like a first place to get started and to meet new people in the community, it can be really helpful. And you can read a lot of cool, like there's a lot of good like fan fiction on there, like from years ago. Like I read fan fiction sometimes. It's like from 2003.
It's not that it's a bad place, it's just kind of not for me. It is a lot of older folks, like I'm talking like people in their like 30s and 40s, and that's, you know, there's a little bit of a generational gap for me. I don't know, I find forums a little hard to navigate, which is weird because I grew up on them, and it's a lot of like real life observations, real life stories that people do, and I'm more into fandom stuff. So I'm always like a fandom person. I'm thinking about like, you know, fictional characters, not necessarily real people.
But most of the time I'm on Tumblr, and I think the people on there are a bit more normal, a bit more grounded.
Why do you think that is?
At first I was thinking maybe it's because people who are like younger use Tumblr more often. I remember I used to use Tumblr when I was like 14 years old, but then Tumblr got a little intense for me, so I went to Twitter instead. But with having the Tumblr, it's like, and especially when it started, you know, it was totally normal to have an SFW on Tumblr. Now it's not, but it used to be. So that's where kind of everyone thought this would be a good idea. You know, young people are more rational, I want to say, not to insult older people. But I think we kind of know what's okay and what's not okay to share on the internet. Yeah, so Tumblr is more of a positive community, I think, and there's not normally too much drama on there.
It's also, like, kind of because I'm gay, there's just a lot more content for women who are into women on Tumblr than I found than on the forum.
Tumblr seems to be the gayest app around.
Yes.
So that makes sense.
Yeah, no, Tumblr is incredibly gay, and I fit in a little more there. The forum's very, I don't know, it feels kind of cishet in comparison, so I like Tumblr. The forum isn't terrible.
The sneeze part of Tumblr survived the entire whatever happened with Tumblr.
Yeah, so Tumblr, it banned NSFW, and what they technically banned was real life NSFW. So any like real pictures of sex or sexy things or female presenting nipples is what they said. Yeah.
Stupid comment.
Right? What does that fucking mean?
There are a few times that I think things might not be up to the guidelines, but they seem to be very good at like hiding their tags and stuff.
They banned all NSFW, but they didn't ban NSFW writing or drawings. They kind of still vet it, but for the most part, NSFW is still present on Tumblr. You just have to be careful about how you tag it. Some people have switched over from tagging things NSFW to NSFT, which stands for Not Safe for Tumblr.
That's great. I like
yes.
that.
But the cool thing about Safe for Work kinks is that they don't read as sexual unless you know what to look for. So, you know, people can draw their fictional characters sneezing all over each other, and Tumblr can't say it's sexual because we can just turn around and be like, nuh-uh, they just got colds.
People sneezing.
Yeah.
Obviously, the community seems to be really well put together and pretty healthy overall. But with each kink community and fetish community, there seems to be healthy and unhealthy aspects of said kink. What would you say are some like healthy aspects you enjoy about the sneeze fetish forum or community, and some unhealthy aspects that you wish people could work on a bit more?
One thing that's not quite as great, but I wouldn't really call problematic, is the joke that we have one collective brain cell, since the community is kind of small. You tend to see multiple versions of the same post because everybody reblogs it, and so sometimes it can take a while to scroll through and find new content.
I've seen online a lot of people are like talking about, is it morally correct to, for example, like induce an allergy attack to someone? I see that posted sometimes, like, is it wrong for me to wear perfume on my date if I know that my date is going to have a reaction to it, and things like that? Because there have been people that, you know, do that and post about it, and some people say, well, is that really morally okay? Like, is this person going to be uncomfortable? Are you going to make their day terrible? Are you going to cause permanent damage? So I think that's a place where it could go wrong.
On a more serious note, for some people, sneezing, illness, wump, etc. is a kink, and for others, they're into it, but not in a kink way. So sometimes people, especially those who don't call it a kink, will make posts that include stuff about underage characters. So even if they didn't mean it to be sexual, they're putting it out in a community where people tend to see that thing as sexual. So even though I don't see it a lot, that can be problematic.
There are creeps in basically every community. There's no community that's untouched by creeps. I know that within the sneeze fetish community, there are creepy dudes who will, you know, film people in public that they see, or who will, like, you know, leave comments on people's videos kind of hounding them for personal information. It's mostly older men, I've noticed, who don't really have an outlet to express this part about themselves. Other than that, though, like, the communities I am in are kind of on the other side of things. It's just a lot of, you know, like, queers making jokes about themselves and, like, sharing stories about, you know, their partners. For the most part, in the communities I've been a part of, those creeps that take advantage of other people, they have been shut down. Like, they don't get far. We have our forum, like our terrible forum that we hate, and the mods on there are pretty okay. They slip sometimes, but they're pretty good about it.
So one thing I really like is it really feels like a community. People get to know each other and are generally pretty supportive. It kind of feels like a little village.
But I think that just in general, the community tends to be really cautious about things. They already think they're weird. A lot of them already think like, oh, I'm such a weird and worthless person for this. Why would I want to, you know, tell anyone about this? When in reality, it's more like people aren't going to mind that much most of the time. I think they're just worried about their own Like, is this going to hurt my image, or is this going to make people hate me? It's a lot of internal worries, I think, within members of the community. Their biggest fear is probably things like, I'm too scared to ask them to do this like crazy aspect of it, so not a lot of bad things ever happen because no one really tries the extremes.
And with the recent coronavirus epidemic going around, how has that affected the community?
Okay, I should clarify that as far as I know, sneezing isn't a symptom. So that's been kind of weird. It's been weird just in that the community is kind of made up of two sects of people. And there's the people who horn out on allergies, and there's the people who horn out on sickness. I kind of fall into the latter category. And when we're making these fictional narratives, like when we're doing art or whether we're doing like a role play scenario in a wave, a lot of them are like sickness-based scenarios. A lot of the people like me who write that stuff, we've all just kind of been like twiddling our thumbs. And we've just kind of been like, so are we allowed to do that? I saw one person posting on my dashboard, and they were talking about, I'm writing this sick fic, and should I clarify after this scene that the caretaker washes their hands? Like, I feel like I'm spreading a bad message if I don't do that. So there's been a lot of that.
When this started escalating, like a couple weeks ago, one of the first things I did was check the forum to see, because while a lot of people know that people in the forum are scummy, I knew for a fact someone would be talking about it, and I wanted to go laugh and see what they were talking about. That'd be fun to make fun of them. But surprisingly, I'd found that the moderators in the forum had already said, limit all discussion about this to these two threads. And there's something like the support thread for people that are having a hard time, and then there was some kind of moral debate or something. And I'm like, well, okay.
Some members of the community have been affected directly, and they've kind of been posting about their stories with their family members and stuff like that. We're trying to keep in good spirits because there is a bit of an overlap between people who a month ago would laugh about, pandemics, and now we can't really do that. So yeah, the most, I think, summarizing post I saw on the topic was from a sneeze fetishist who, again, writes a lot of sick fic, and they just said, look, I know I said I wanted everyone to be sick, but I didn't mean that.
You see coronavirus and COVID-19's having, tags on Pornhub and stuff. People are posting coronavirus porn already, which had a very negative reaction, I think, among the community. Most people are really, don't turn this into something it's not. This is a very serious issue, and we should try to keep it separate. For me, it was separate from the beginning because it's not, I don't know, it's not super related. This is a global pandemic versus me on my phone looking at anime pictures of people sneezing. I think that some people are kind of worried about it. They're going to think, oh, this is going to end our community, or, people are going to think I'm a bad person because of this. But I really don't see that, and I kind of feel bad for those people and want to help them, but I don't think I can.
I am concerned about and repulsed by the virus, but it does feel significantly different from the kink for me. If an illness is serious, either because the symptoms are awful or because there's an epidemic or pandemic situation, that's a major no for me. I will actively avoid that content in a kink context because I cannot and will not sexualize it. I think it's okay to have a story that involves some kind of serious illness. After all, it happens in the real world. But that shouldn't be sexualized, and as such, I don't want it on my kink blog. I am still into sneezing and other mild cold-like symptoms that people might find unpleasant, but I also want people to be taken care of, and I would never wish suffering on anyone. Fiction is a bit different in this respect, that we don't get those symptoms and scenarios unless we create them. Whether fictional or real life, I want people to receive appropriate care and be supported through unpleasant times. So I think it's just a reminder that whatever you enjoy, it's good to practice empathy and make sure your pleasure doesn't come at the expense of others. But it is good to comfort, help, and support people when they are suffering, even if that suffering has the side effect of turning you on.
Yeah, this has been really good. I really enjoyed talking to you.
Yeah, it's been cool. I was very nervous, but it's actually, as soon as I got in here, I calmed down immediately. So you're pretty easy to talk to.
That's all the questions I have, but is there anything that you would want the general populace to know? One more thing that you just want to share? Maybe
just the idea that everyone has some weird kink, whether they know it or not, probably. And so this is just one of those things. It's not super interesting, but like it's also not something that can just be dismissed by people that actually do enjoy it. So just don't judge people for it, but like don't be scared of mentioning it at the same time.
I would just say, and I don't know if for just my community, but for any fetish community, anyone with a harmless kink that is just kind of weird, they probably feel just as weird about it as anyone hearing about it does. Just like be kind to your friends and their weird kinks. They probably can't help it, and they've probably already scrutinized themselves about it. So like listen to what they have to say, ask them questions. Like I'm delighted to be having questions asked to me right now. It's nice. I did this interview mostly because I kind of wanted to put a voice out there from the weirdos who are over here thinking flu season is hot.
Well, thanks for your time, man.
Yeah, thank you for being willing to give a more hopefully positive view on this topic.
I'll admit, when I first started doing the video series on it, it was mostly just to make fun of it. But then as I did more research, that's when I realized, oh, this is just a bunch of normal people who happen to like sneezes.
Yeah, it's a great topic for like a comedy channel because there's so many like weird aspects about it. But then I feel like if you were to research more into it, like you did, like you find more, it's also more normal and also more in depth. Like there's a lot under the surface, or most people would say, look at this weird forum, and it's like, no, but you don't know there's a culture, which I think is probably more interesting and will put a more positive light on the topic.
And that's the interview. I got to actually learn a lot through reading this interview. If you want to follow me for whatever reason, I'm Hello Adri, Adri with 2 I's on Twitter. Bye.
And here I am, 3 months later, to finally finish this video off. Part 2 of this series helped my channel grow in such a huge way. And I have all of you guys to thank for even making this part 3 possible. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed this. Make sure to dislike, leave a hate comment, unsubscribe, and as always, report this video. I never want to hear anyone sneeze or talk about sneezes ever again.